My name is Mikala Hillis. I'm a senior or a P2 in major of pharmacy, and today I'm going to be talking about becoming an active citizen through SHARE. I always considered myself a leader. I had titles, I checked the boxes, I did the work I needed to, I got stuff done. It wasn't until I came to Purdue that I began to discover a more complete definition of leadership and to develop a stance, a voice, and an understanding of what effective leadership really looks like. Here, I learned how the positive impact that I strove to make could actually be realized. My first steps in this journey took place through attending a leadership conference, another leadership conference. But there was something different about this one. At EMV, I was introduced to the concepts of the SHARE pillars and a group-centered model of inclusive leadership. What? I'm the leader. I help others through my hard work, right? Regardless of my preconceived notions, I pursued the intrigue of strengths-based inclusive leadership and took advantage of opportunities to learn more about these lofty concepts. Self-awareness, honoring the contributions of others, acquiring competencies, reimagining leadership, and educating and advocating. In these principles, I found the language to articulate the values and goals I have as a leader. From the EMV retreat, I continued on to the EMV experience and became an EMV facilitator, followed by EMV student director. With each year of my involvement in this leadership development program, I delved deeper into what it means to be an inclusive leader and put these principles of SHARE into action. Not long after I was introduced to the SHARE pillars, my leadership activities with civic engagement and leadership development led me to the spring service break in Memphis. There, I was privileged to investigate the ways in which I can most effectively pursue positive leadership and the ways that I can create change in the community that I hope to positively impact. Through this experience, I learned about the active citizens continuum. This model challenged me to evaluate my activities and what I viewed as my leadership and service. Was I really making a difference? Was it the best kind of difference? A difference that brought positive change? Alongside strong and passionate student leaders, I made the space for myself to take a stance on the issues I cared about, while experiencing the ways in which leadership and service are inextricably tied to each other. But where did these deeply fulfilling experiences and self-analysis and time spent exploring these models leave me as a leader and a citizen seeking to positively impact my community? I'll start with self-awareness. One of the most obvious leadership myths I followed, almost religiously in fact, was that in order to effectively lead, I had to be the leader that others wanted me to be. Compelled by perfectionism and a people-pleasing attitude, I'd been molding myself to fit the ideals and expectations that I felt others held for me. I tiptoed around topics I deemed sensitive or controversial and refrained from allowing myself to hold any personal opinions. But, empowered by the concepts of SHARE and active citizenship, I began to redefine who I am as a leader. I embraced my social identities and stepped out of my comfort zone to listen to my own voice and make it heard. I formed opinions, took a stance, and most importantly, took ownership of what I know and what I believe. One of my strongest beliefs has always been in the importance of honoring others. But through the lens of the SHARE model, my perspective on this idea grew astronomically. I fell in love with the concept of counter stories and the sounds of the not oft heard voices of history. Learning about the incredible achievements of strong individuals and the differences they made in the world opened my eyes to the strengths and, yes, the contributions of the individuals in my life. I expanded my perfectionist ideal of success and instead sought to develop leadership in others. I sought input rather than output as a leader. I now strive to follow Ella Baker's vision. A is for acquire competencies, which I quickly learned means refining one's personal outlook and approach in order to create an optimal environment for others' contributions and success. Competencies like cross-cultural communication, curiosity, social perspective taking, and empathy have been instrumental in advancing my leadership as a student professional. In the practice of pharmacy, these values are paramount in providing optimal patient care and articulating those values, taking ownership of them, and using them to plan for my future practice has empowered me to be a leader among my peers in my education and to learn from them in turn. Now, some of these competencies are harder than others. Who would have thought that self-care could make one into a more effective leader? I'm the student who skips 3 meals a day, showering and sleeping, and sometimes does that the next day too. But through researching and developing an office self-care station, I've come to become very acquainted with this concept and the benefits, value, and yes, the utility of making time for myself. R is for reimagine leadership. Well, that's what this whole thing has been about, isn't it? shifting from a perspective of individual duty and obligation to a group-centered approach, focusing on incorporating the strengths and contributions of those around me. Through working with amazing people in the community, I discovered strengths and potential beyond what I could ever have imagined. Not only that, but I found ways to succeed through failure, through rejection, and to find value in the accomplishments that were achieved when my perfectionist ideals were not obtained, when I was not meeting the expectations of others. I was making the most difference. And finally, educate and advocate. I felt that I had learned so much. The only logical next step was this pillar E. Using my knowledge to make an active difference in the direct service that I love, I now look beyond meeting needs and seek to create change along the individuals involved to eliminate those needs. Through sharing what I've learned about the true meaning of leadership, I work to inspire others to create positive change. My goal is to propagate the space for individuals to take ownership of their passions, capitalize on their personal strengths, and move to make a difference. Without these models, my concept of leadership would never have developed that far. In conclusion, I spent most of my life perceiving leadership as one ideal. I had to stand out. I had to be the one that they followed. To be worthy of that, I had to choose a direction that everybody else agreed with. I had the desire to be a leader and to make a difference in the world, but I put the responsibility on myself as an individual and set perfectionist standards that I could never have achieved. But through my work and through my learning about the shared pillars of inclusive leadership, I've taken a strengths-based perspective that's heavily dependent on facilitating the leadership of others rather than taking charge. I'm passionate about the directions in which I lead, and I use my strengths to contribute alongside amazing individuals with the goal of affecting real positive change in my community.